Peace and blessings, family, and assalamu alaikum. You're tuned in to the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business. And we're going to talk today and do a little money psychology tune-up. So sit back, get your coffee, and tune in.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
We'll be right back with the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks. Stay tuned. Greetings, conscious entrepreneurs. Add the Mind of an Entrepreneur show to your Roku TV lineup and catch up on past episodes of all your favorite Mo Today shows. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings, family. You're tuned into the Mind of an Entrepreneur channel, the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad channel, and this is Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks. So welcome. I hope y'all got some good coffee. I see a couple of you all in the chat already. So welcome. Wa alaikum salam, Asada and Afini. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, thank you. So, wow, it's been a little bit of a turbulent week for me. Just dealing with a lot of stuff. Moving into a new dimension. Wa alaikum salam, Brother Michael. Thank you, sir. Moving into a new dimension. I got my frankincense here burning. So, you know, I'm burning off some spirits. Had to move that over there before it get me to coughing. Brother Carlos, wa alaikum salam. Welcome, welcome. You know, moving into a new dimension. And a lot of times we see people and we say, man, I want to be where they are, and I want to do that, and I want to be like that person. Um, it's a blessing, and the rewards are great, and the rewards to come will be even greater. Walaikum salam, Sister Alita. But getting there can be tough, right? Because you start moving around like certain, I call them like emotional staples. They could be people, like Salam, Brother Solomon. They could be people, they could be places, they could be things, they can be situations that are your kind of emotional anchors that sort of start to shift on you. And it's because what Allah begins to require us to do is to think differently, because in order to handle major blessings, tremendous blessings, he has to be certain that we're thinking on a certain level, right? If he's about to bless us, for example, with a lucrative business, he wants to make sure that we don't have a 9 to 5 mindset. A lot of y'all don't understand that because you remove Allah or God or your spiritual practice from your business, and you think that that's going to get you somewhere. Um, if you go and take a look at one of the friends of the show's Brother Bedford, I think it's at brotherbedford.com. He did an interview with successful Black millionaires and billionaires. And one thing that they all have in common is that they all have some form of spiritual practice, some form of religious practice that is folded into their divine mission as a millionaire and entrepreneur. And if you go and look at Dennis Kimbro, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, and one of the common things that those millionaires and billionaires that he interviewed in his book have in common are their spiritual practices. Okay. If you go to any of the key people, if you look at Tony Robbins, and I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, but mostly what a lot that he does. Oh, okay. They said our internet is shoddy. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. One of the things that he does is talks about a spiritual practice, a religious practice. So a lot of times those of us that are in the working class sector, we have a tendency to think that God shouldn't be a part of the process. And that's because a lot of us are on jobs and in offices that we can't control. Greetings, Brother Kevin. Yes, thank you. Yeah, a lot of us, okay, thank you. Thank you for that. A lot of us are in jobs that we don't control. And if they say, okay, no religion, no spiritual practices, nothing, then of course, then we can't do that. And so, but what we do is we forget that we can do our own thing. So if we're driving a truck, if we're sitting at a desk, we can always take a moment to go into ourselves and be grateful and talk to our God. Whenever I've ran offices, I always give space for people to go in and have prayer and meditation at their appointed times and when they choose to do it. When I've been on major projects, part of what helped me solve a lot of problems that get me to the point where I can give away this free game to you guys is because I did a lot of praying and a lot of meditation. So something that I'm doing recently is just doubling my meditation time, where if it's normally like 20 minutes, 4 or 5 times a day, I try to make it, 6 or 7 times a day, just to add more to it so that I'm just in tune, because it's about manifesting mentally to that next level. And that's what I've been focusing on. I start focusing on Where can I tweak myself to improve my condition? Because here's the deal. In order to defeat or overcome the forces that are against us, and I'm going to define that in a minute, you're going to have not only divine intervention, but a mindset that expands beyond those forces that are against you. Okay? Think about it this way. When we're working our job and our mind is focused on that 9 to 5. There's only so much money we're going to make. There's only so much we're going to manifest at that focus level. We're not going to make any more or get to that millionaire, billionaire status unless we go into some of these mental strategies that will then help us to begin to change our focus, whether it means the focus becomes a newer job, a bigger job. Maybe the focus is a steal away program where you kind of just steal away. Whatever that new focus is, you have to mentally get yourself there first. So let's talk about, and this is our money psychology tune-up. And type in the chat if you have any money psychology or spiritual entrepreneur questions for me that I can answer on today's show. Good morning, Mom. So let me know that because I want to answer those questions as well. Let's talk about forces being against us. And a lot of people trip out because they start thinking conspiracy theory, or, maybe you go, oh, well, she's a Muslim. I don't believe like she believes. But let me just give you an example. Dr. George Fraser opens up a lot of his speeches. I don't know how many of you all know Dr. George Fraser. He's the power networking guru. He has power networking conference every single year. You can Google it, Google him. Go to YouTube and take a look at some of his speeches on networking and entrepreneurship. It's really, really motivational. Walaikum salam, Brother Lamont. But he opens up a lot of his speeches by saying that white people are not going to save Black people. They're not even thinking about Black people. They're thinking about their families, their lives, their business, and your money. Because everybody knows that in America, the majority of the people who have gotten ridiculously wealthy have done it off the backs of the Black community, because it's just a model directly from slavery. America was built on the backs of Black people. This modern capitalistic system that we know of today was built on the backs of Black people, free labor. So people come over from other countries, and what do? They oftentimes were redlined and couldn't go into a white community, so they went straight to the Black community, opened up liquor stores, nail shops, grocery stores, you name it, loan sharks, all kinds of stuff. And so from a consumer standpoint now, it's not surprising that we're the number one consumer, because we've kind of been coached and made that way. I posted on my Facebook page, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, go follow me, an old commercial from Burger King, where Burger King had this real Black-defied ad in the 70s where they was trying to get Black customers, people singing and dancing up in the Burger King. So then they began to groom us. So that as we got to this online stage, they didn't all want to have to go into the hood to make money. So with the use of, walaikum salam, Marva. So with the use of technology, television, radio, it was at one point billboards, newspaper, magazine, and then moving on from there to the internet. Instead of going to the Black community, they began to target the Black consumer, target us to the point where we then began to be very responsive, because we were so happy to see ourselves in these advertisings and these ads. And we love it to see our favorite person on the cover of a certain magazine or on a show. And so that began to feed propaganda that really kind of created us like robots. We're brainwashed and we started to consume. So if you notice, there's certain things that are just really popular in the Black neighborhood. You have some restaurants that you don't even see in white neighborhoods, but you see all the time in Black neighborhoods, or neighborhoods where it's right on the cusp of the Black community. Places like Popeyes. There was a time where you only saw Popeyes in the hood, things like that. And then moving forward, what the concern is now is them saying, we don't even want to have to deal with them. So we're going to create all this artificial intelligence, and we're going to gather all of this data. We're going to create TikToks. We're going to see if we can figure out how they create, how they think, what they do. And we're going to become culture vultures. And so we're just going to keep extracting culture from them so that we can take it and chop it up and market it. Here's a problem. Here's a problem, white people. Black people are perpetual creators. We're always creating a new look, a new vibe, a new way to be, a new way to roll, a new way to talk, a new way to dance, a new way to sing, a new form of music. Because that, as long as you keep us in a traumatic situation, we're going to continue to create our way up out of it. So our instinct is to respond in the way that God himself recreated himself. So we keep recreating ourselves. The more trauma you put on us, the more you put us through, the more we recreate. Then there's a new culture and there's a new culture. So you can't keep up. So you may as well bring us to the table and sit down with us. And if you're wondering what kind, I recommend, look, call me. Sit us down at your table, because we're going to give you access to more customers. We're going to help you find a way to do business that's more sustainable than what you're doing now. This is why your companies go out of business, because you bank it around certain data that you get from the culture developers, which is Black people. When you get that data, you then go off to your corner and you produce products and goods and services that speak to that data. All the while over here, we done recreated something else. So if you want to understand sustainability, you have to understand how to hook into us and hook into us in those circles that you don't have your imprint in. So these are the types of forces that are against us, because everywhere we turn, somebody's telling us how we should be, who we should be, how we should handle our money. It's at the point now where they don't even have to tell us how to be about money. They just have to put us in a system. And when we're isolated in that system and we see how they do business, and it's all about backstabbing and being predatory. It's not about giving and supporting. There's other business models. But because we don't know that, we just know that hustler, predatory mentality that we've learned over the years, working under these people that have had their thumb on our success and they foot on our neck. We think that's the only way to do business. And what happens when we do it? We end up in jail. We end up in trouble. We end up ostracized. So you have to find another way of thinking and being and living, because that's what's going to be sustainable. So look at the chain. If white society, now global society, has always looked to Black people, whether it be for the father of mathematics and shipping. Christopher Columbus was half original himself, and then he had Black people on the boat with him who were helping him navigate. They got lost. That's why they said, oh, there goes some Indians. But those were really original people that were living here on this earth, on this part of the earth that was called the Americas at that time. Abu Bakr had been going back and forth trading with these original people here. They had been communicating telepathically to one another to even know where each other were. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that Black people walked here to the Americas or navigated through the Bering Straits. There are tribes in Africa that are nomadic tribes that move around. When I trace my DNA, I'm from a nomadic Muslim tribe on both sides of my family. I'm from Fulani Muslims who were nomads. Nomads meaning they walked. They walked here with their buffalo, with their animals. They migrated. It may have taken them 1,000 years, but they came across the Bering Straits down through Canada, all the way down through South America, migrating, moving. So, but the rest of the world has always depended upon that group of people, which is us, to make money, to do anything, to build the world. So whether it was all the discoveries that came along with that migration process, whether it's stealing African slaves, and African slaves not only went to the Americas, which was the chattel slavery, which was the harshest and most restricting. I know I'm not supposed to say this word slavery, but that's what they say now. Don't say slave. Don't say, it used to say enslaved person. Don't say slavery. You should say enslavement. There's probably something weird in there with that. But anyway, I'm going to say it because I think y'all understand where I'm coming from. Whether it was taking Africans, and African slaves went throughout the world. So not only were we, the majority of the slaves were taken by the Portuguese and down to Brazil and throughout South America. Then you had in sub-Saharan Africa, different tribes that were then taken to the US, to the Caribbean, but first to the Caribbean. They dropped off those that they say they really couldn't control. The more palatable ones, the Americans liked. So, they brought us here. So whether it's making money that way, slaves went to London. A lot of the Black people that are in London came there as enslaved people. France, China, believe it or not. Middle East is a made up political name. That's really Africa. And so you had, and this concept of Arab is new because you've always had Northern and Northeastern Africans who were Muslims, okay? Many of the even early converts to Christianity were Black, obviously, because Jesus was Black. And even the concept of Islam and Christianity, that came later. That came after Prophet Muhammad. That came after Jesus. Those are terminologies that are used to divide us because so much of the Bible and so much of the Holy Quran are intertwined with one another. So that dividing and packaging in order to make money became a staple. And so these people have always used us and our culture to make money, whether it's, taking us around the world and then later going, okay, that not only are going to be free slaves, when they get out of slavery, we're not even going to tell them that they free. That's why we have this holiday called Juneteenth, because I forget the date that slavery was actually, somebody can put in the chat if they know the date that we were supposedly, allegedly free, the date of the Emancipation Proclamation. And it wasn't until June 19th that a lot of people found out. A lot of folks are saying, well, how could that be? Well, there was no internet. There was no mail. Had to travel word of mouth. Even if there was a newspaper, that newspaper had to be taken somewhere and dropped off. So it took time for the word to spread that we was free. And so even after that, putting people into sharecropping situations. Is that the date of the Emancipation Proclamation, Sister Sandra? She said June 19th, 1965. That's Juneteenth. But what is the date of the Emancipation Proclamation is what I want to know. Thank you for that, though. Then we went into the Industrial Revolution. Some of these companies right here in Chicago especially the meat packing companies. So a lot of your grandfathers and great grandfathers worked at meat packing companies. The industrial revolution began to say, hey, you know what? We're having problems with these white unions, the Irish and the Germans who had come over, the Europeans, I should say, who had come over. They had began to form unions, and they began to demand certain wages. And so the industrialists said, you know what? We sick of this. What we're going to do is we're going to put signs up and down the Mason-Dixon line to let Black people know that if they come and work for us, we will give them an hourly wage in exchange for an hour of services. Well, for Black people, that sounded great. January 1963. Okay. So it took, in some cases, if you study the Civil War, there's always this short version that they put out there. But if you study the Civil War and the dissemination of information from January of 1863, it took, in some cases, 1 to 2 years for people to even find out that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. I think if you lived in some of the more major plantation areas, can't even say major cities, but some of the larger plantations, they knew. But a lot of the Black people that were on the smaller plantations in these smaller areas, they didn't know for almost 2 years. That's the kind of broader version of that explanation. I won't go into that, but so let me go back to the industrialists. The industrialists were having problems with the unions, with the Europeans. They started making certain demands, certain human rights demands. They started demanding better working conditions and more money and things like that. And they said, okay, well, Black people will be really happy. Thank you, Mom. Black people will be really happy if they can get an hourly wage for hourly pay. Why? Because many of us were working as sharecroppers on the farm. We work all day, can't see morning to can't see night. And then what do? We turn in that crop, we turn in that money, and then the sharecropper takes 50% of it or more. So we work all of it. And so the thought of being able to work for 1 hour, where we may work, 12 hours for, was enticing to a lot of us. We didn't pay it. We had already been working in insane conditions in the cotton fields and the sugarcane fields and all these other areas on the plantation, getting beat, getting demeaned. So to go into a factory that maybe was unsafe, maybe wasn't healthy for us, we wasn't tripping on that. And so many of our people they moved, they migrated to the north in droves because these companies began to see, oh, this is how we can use Black people, but we got to pay them because they didn't sign the Emancipation Proclamation. We don't want to look inhumane, so we'll pay them a few cents. It's more than what they was getting down south. And we don't even have to really worry about asbestos and different things that make folks sick. Just bring them in there. So that's what they did, again, on our backs. So not only was the country built, but then the Industrial Revolution, the entire industrial complex is built off of Black people working in factories. And oftentimes we couldn't get that management position. We couldn't get that other position. So oftentimes we just worked on the lines, or we worked in some industry that fed into the factory. What am I saying? Again, on our backs. We were discouraged from being entrepreneurs. So most of us grew up in families where people would talk negatively about people who were in business for themselves. The whole concept was like, man, he ain't even got no job. I remember how my grandmother used to treat the door-to-door insurance salesman when he would come over. He'd get cussed out. So what is that doing to you as a child when you start thinking about business and entrepreneurship? The mindset would be, oh, they're a hustler. They always hustling. That's part of your money psychology. What did you hear as it related to those people? And if your family had a good job in a factory or at a company, then the people who didn't have the good jobs were considered lower class, if you will, from you. So there was always the conversation. Always the conversation. Oh, this one ain't got no job. This one's always hustling. So some people, when they get older and they decide they want to go into business, they equate business with hustling and taking advantage of people, when really that person was probably just trying to do for self. That person probably was just trying to have an independent way of making money for themselves. Maybe for whatever reason, it was tough for them. Then when so many of us started to go into the workforce, they said, okay, this happened, I think, somewhere around the 70s. Well, we're going to start doing background checks. So if you're a felony, if you got bad credit, if you don't, you got anything that we think is wrong with you, then we're going to weed you out and tell you that you can't have this job. We're going to make you go to college. Even though we may have in some of these positions white people who work here who don't have a college degree, if you want this job, you're going to have a college degree. You better not be no felon. You better not have no bad record. You better have a good performance review. So then that started to be a dividing factor. And then that's how they started to make these jobs seem really elite. We start thinking we all that because we working somewhere. We've totally lost. It's been trained up out of us, that mindset that we can, if you know you're making a certain amount of money per week on your job, you can make that on your own. Because this is something I had to work on when I came out of corporate. I could go to the white man and make millions of dollars as a business consultant, as a developer. I'd get hired. I had my own business, but I'd get hired on the projects and they say, build this pipeline, build this or that. And I would build it. And they didn't pay me no percentage of the pipeline. They didn't pay me no percentage of the highway extension. They didn't pay me no extra money for building any of this stuff. I got my annual salary, which they made sure was really good, right? So it was better than other Black folks. People like, what, you making almost $300,000 a year? What? But that's how they did it. So when I got ready to say, well, I want to be my own developer, I want to develop my own stuff, I struggled and had to take emotional intelligence courses because I said, if I could do this for somebody else, why can't I do it for self? And there was a reason behind that, because I was suffering from the greatest sin that has ever been put upon any person in the world. And I'm going to play a little short clip video where the minister talks about this. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to take myself off screen.
You feed yourself foolishness, you make a fool of yourself. And anytime you waste time feeding yourself foolishness, making yourself to think and to act as the foolish, with every foolish act, you are being further and further removed from your connection to God. The Black man and woman of North America and the world in general has been robbed of the knowledge of self. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us, this is the worst of all robberies, to take away from a human being the knowledge of self.
I hope y'all heard that. It's the greatest sin, to take away from a human being the knowledge of self. And part of what I'm talking to you about is the grafting process that has taken place over the years of slowly stripping away from us our desire to do for self, our knowledge of our history. Many of us have no idea that while the white man was building his industry through the industrial, what they call the Industrial Revolution, that there were Black entrepreneurs during Reconstruction and beyond who were inventing, who were your inventors, who held patents, who were making money in their independent businesses that were ultimately destroyed. And so what happens when you destroy their businesses? Then you destroy the history of that idea. See, because if you look at somebody who looks like you, who has done something or something similar, I'm building a museum, right? And it's really, really tough. And when I look at somebody, another Black woman, like a Annie Malone, or some of these sisters who started banks out in Virginia, when I look at those people, I get inspiration. I say, you know what? I see. I see their mindset. I see how they roll. I see what they did. They accomplished something during times where a lot of people didn't think that they should do it or didn't support them, or they were kind of on their own, but somehow they trudged along and got the support that they needed. When you see those examples, it means that you can go another day. There's that one more day concept, right? Well, one more day. I was more successful today than I was yesterday. One more day, one more day. And each day, in every way, you have to keep getting better and better. But when you strip the knowledge of self, people not only don't know who they are, they don't know their history. Their history is not important. Doesn't matter, as long as they just know about slavery and that's it. Then it means that they're going to be limited to what they can do. But also the part of stripping from us, walaikum salam, Roz, the stripping from us our knowledge of self is also our ability to act ourselves. So the minister talked about consuming things that are bad for you. It's not just talking about food. Consuming mindsets and thoughts and conversations that are just negative. Somehow the world has made us think that we can party our way into success, that we can party our way into getting what we want out of life. Somehow we think that we can do that. Some of us think that the only way to have fun is go to a club, go to party. So the other things of life. What about going to a museum? What about going to an art collection show? What about going and experiencing nature? What about going to a spiritual retreat together? I mean, there's so many other things that we can do that are outside of us consuming and being a part of things that don't necessarily feed us. And sometimes you just want to kick back with a little music and have fun. That's cool too. But you can't overconsume on that. So tweaking our money psychology means thinking about what are we consuming? Same way we would do if we found out that we were diabetic, or if we found out we had high blood pressure or high cholesterol. We found out that we were overweight, because a lot of times we gain weight, we don't even know. Then we would say, well, what am I consuming that's making me bigger, running up my blood pressure? What is it? Well, am I eating too much cake, too much sweets later? If I don't like my body, well, I got to pull back on the sweets a little bit. Let me pull back on the bread. Let me pull back on the white stuff that I'm eating. Let me go a little bit more to fruits and vegetables, help my kidney cleanse and my liver cleanse, and, lower my insulin levels so I can lose weight. What tea should I be drinking? So you start to kind of find antidotes for your problem. Well, you have to do the same thing with your psychology. If you're praying and working on something, what I've learned is that I have to go inside of myself and say, where can I improve? How can I think? Am I leaning a little bit too much in this direction? Am I doing too much of that? And start thinking, what's feeding? Have more conversations with because see, here's the thing. If you understand how the mind and thoughts travel, okay, the longer you focus on something without resistance, the more you're moving that thing into fruition. So the thing is you have to focus until you run up against resistance, pull back, and you almost sort of kind of forget about it for a minute. Pull back and let it be. So if you're trying to help, this is another thing to tell you, because a lot of us coach people and people call us with problems and things like that. I try to do is when I'm talking to somebody, I still try to be of service. Sometimes that's good and bad, but I'm listening to them. And if a person, for example, is just not feeling good, their energy might be a little low, then when you sit with that person, whether it's a coaching session, counseling session, or just a phone call, friend to friend, relative to relative, you want to spend more time talking about uplifting things and things that are going to uplift that person than you do the negative stuff, whether it's talking about somebody else or whatever. So you got to balance that. It's all about balance. So if you spend most of your time talking negatively about people, and we do it in a deceptive intelligence way, because we talk about a person and we put it out there, and then we say, well, but I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's right. Or we say, what she doing don't make no sense, or where he going, I don't understand it. So we put it out there, then we say something negative, and then we try to act like all we're doing is just giving someone an example of what we won't do. So really what you're doing is doubling, tripling down on the negative. That's not going to help a person that you're working with, because if you're doing it and you think that intellectually that makes sense, you're going to do it over and over and over again. That's not the way to do it. So the best thing to do is, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, is not to gossip and slander people. Some of us don't even know that we're slandering people because we just run in our mouths. And then after we run our mouth and we put it out there, we feel bad. And then we try to justify why we're running our mouths. And then after we justify why we're trying to run our mouth, we try to say what we would do and why we wouldn't do it. And then that adds on to it. So it becomes slander, because that person that you're talking to now is looking at what you said. And even if they consider you a reliable source, and even if you think you said it in a way that's promotional or supportive, most time it's not. And so what we have to do is learn how to go inside of ourselves and say, what is it inside of me that always has something to say about somebody? What is it inside of me that's having this yearning desire to pick up the phone and tell somebody else about somebody else's business? Because in your insecure moment, you're doing comparison. And you see this and you go, oh, I don't like that. So you call somebody and say, let me tell you about that. I wouldn't do that. Would you? Now, don't get me wrong. There's times where one of my girlfriends, I'll see something on television and I'll be like, girl, I got the tea. Did you see Will Smith slap Chris Rock? And we'll just talk about it. I'm not saying that you gotta just be dry like that, but be careful, especially when you start talking about love ties and love bonds. You start talking about loved ones. These are things that can mess up your money psychology, because you can be over here focused, but then you got other people around you in that love tie position eroding away at your support system. So this is why we're taught not to be polytheists. There is no God but Allah. So we go to Allah for our support. Now, Allah has to come in the person of somebody, because right now he's not sitting here next to me. So sometimes we need to make a phone call to a family member, to a friend. We need somebody to say a good word to us, give us a hug, give us some support, whatever it is, right? But we have to understand and be very conscious as we're doing these types of things. Even in addition on our money psychology, I'll make this last point before we end. You have to really think about and look at and unravel how you grew up. A lot of times people from blue collar families, if your family were working class people who were into their jobs and you come from a community where they bragged about, oh, your father worked for GM, your mother worked for so-and-so. And, and when you hear that kind of braggadocious thought, like these people around you are the shit because they work at this particular company. What you have to understand, what that's doing to you from a money psychology standpoint, is that your brain is saying, if I don't work 24 hours a day, I'm not successful. So when you have a problem, what do? You go to work. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to work and work cheerfully, but it's not just work, it's how you work and where you work. So when you're unraveling, and when I work with you one-on-one for your money psychology, if you book a coaching session with me, I'm going to help you unravel that. We'll understand, what was the definition of success for you growing up? What did you hear was successful? Usually it was this person that worked at GM, or that one that worked at Pontiac, and this one that got a good government job. And so we hear that kind of thing. And then now we're out here trying to be entrepreneurs. We're going against the grain of a psychology that was embedded in us as children, because maybe that insurance salesman, maybe that person who was selling something down on the corner or whatever, maybe that person was viewed as a hustler and was looked at negatively. When I talk to people who say, well, I have a friend who say, my grandmother was a salesperson. She owned a bar, and she was into sales. And when you went in the bar, you could buy pies and cakes, and not only just the liquor, but he talks about how his grandmother knew how to attract people into her business, and people came there and hung out. It wasn't just a bar. That's generally going to be somebody who sees entrepreneurship in a certain way. So he sees entrepreneurship and sales as a way of life. And that person that's working the job every day and coming and spending that money in his grandmother's bar is the person who they don't see as on the same level. His grandmother was on a higher level. Let me know in the chat if you understand where I'm coming from. So for him, that's a different coaching, because I understand where he comes from, and it's easier for him to make money. So you have to unravel that. Those of us that are stuck in that working class mindset, we think that every waking hour of the day we have to be doing something. We think that certain things are made for certain times of the day, right? So, for example, my friend who comes from an entrepreneurial background where everybody in his family had their own businesses and things like that, it's nothing for him to go, I took off at noon and decided to, take myself down to the beach for an hour. Or he'll say, I go to yoga at 1. Us working class people, we go out work out either in the morning or at night, because it's either before work or after work. But he'll say 2 o'clock, he'll say, I decided to go to yoga. So breaking up that pattern, because let me tell you something, you have to be able to manifest your way there. This society that we live in already knows that if you're working a particular job, and I'm not putting jobs down, don't get me wrong, but I just want us to understand when we're working on our job. If you're making $150,000 a year, how much more are you going to be able to make next year? Well, if you work that job, what are you going to get? A 5% raise, 10%? You might get 20%, or maybe you'll get a bonus. But if you're sitting up saying, no, I want to be free, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be a billionaire, it's not going to happen on that 9 to 5 unless you move into some type of partnership, some type of profit sharing. Something has to change. Unless you kind of steal away, have something that you do on the side. These are things that I help us to think about when we're unraveling our money psychology. The other thing was, what was the conversation? I have another friend who said that his father always talked to them about IRAs and bonds and investments and how to handle money and things like that. He said that's what they talked about around the dinner table at his house. Well, for a lot of us, we didn't have a dinner table. We didn't have family dinners. A lot of people today don't raise their children where everybody in the house eats dinner together. You got the child who's off on their own island, even if they still at home at 25 or 30. You got the wife that's on her island, the husband that's on his island, whoever else lives in the house. Everybody's on their own little island and nobody's coming together. There's no orchestrated unification. It's just all island living. Well, what does that do to us? What does that do to our money psychology? See, many of us that go into business for ourselves as entrepreneurs, we end up on an island. And so a lot of us say, well, I don't want to be on this island. So we try to get off the island and we give up our entrepreneurial dreams. And we say, well, you know what? I'll just get a job. A lot of people are so restricted from a money psychology standpoint that they will even restrict you in an effort to protect you. Or even in their, that gossip slander thing. It's so funny because when I moved to DC, I was commuting to DC, working on a project with the Obama administration. And then I had my business partner, Dr. Dormo, as a consulting project for a lot of years. And then I moved into a profit sharing position and then ultimately helped build the hospital. I ended up evolving out of that because I never actually meant to stay there permanently. It was just going to be a building and development process. And it was time to manifest on another level. So one thing about me, I'm always trying to go from level to level. But we started to gain a lot of notoriety, right? As, what we were doing in the healthcare field and helping so many people. And people would say, people in my family would say, oh, she's that dude's secretary or she's that dude's manager. I've never been a secretary my entire life. And I don't know when the last time I was a manager. So my point is, and this is not even to bash anybody because people are where they are. And the other part of learning is understanding that there's a consciousness level attached to everything. So people who live their lives by reducing and packaging people, there's a consciousness attached to it. And so they are where they are, and that's why they are where they are, and it is what it is. But so I try not to bash people. I try to just understand this is where you are. And so what I have to do sometimes is understand I got to adjust because people are at different levels. And if I'm going to get to this other level, sometimes I have to kind of fall back. But we all have to know that, right? So fall back off of the thinking. If all you do is go every Friday after work, you go to happy hour, or maybe every day you go to some happy hour after work and you hang out and you kick it. You got this certain group of people. Start to play around with the mix of people. Maybe you always talk to this one particular person every single day. And so maybe you got to move it around. My mom said it's how people value and see you. That's exactly right. Some people they just can't see you. And so you got to know that. You got to know that when you're standing in the face of somebody. See, I think we know that with white people. I think we know when we go to work that they can't see us. We want them to see us, but we know that. So we work extra hard to get them to see us. But in other cases, a lot of people just don't see us. And a lot of the reason why they can't see is because their vision isn't that strong. They don't have 20/20. Why can't they see us? Because our mission is not theirs. So I learned a long time ago that I, as a person, have a very special mission. You heard me talk a little bit about that short sojourn from Chicago to DC, back to Chicago. But I've always had a very special mission. And I understood that everybody can't see me. Everybody can't recognize my mission. And a lot of times in my desire is I want everybody to have their own mission. I'm like, come on, y'all, let's go. Mission. But some people just can't see it. And some people can't fly that high. They run out of oxygen. What happens to a person when they start running out of oxygen? They start going crazy, getting upset, start kicking and screaming because they're trying to breathe. But you might be taking them too high. And so sometimes you got to let them float down there on the level that they're comfortable with until they build up their stamina and they can move a little higher. And you have to continue to soar like an eagle so you can continue to go. So part of working with your money psychology, I will work with your thoughts and your spirituality around money. Okay. So if you do want to book one of those sessions, money psychology, emotional intelligence with me, where I'm just working you through some stuff. Look, everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs a counselor. If you go to my links on Instagram or Facebook, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, there'll be a link there for a customized coaching session. And if you buy one coaching session, I will give you one for free. I just wanted to put that out there to you. Let me know in the chat any questions before we go. You see scrolling across the bottom, we are blessed today. We're going to be doing a tour with the Black Muslim History Tour. We're going to be participating in the Black Muslim History Tour that is moving throughout Chicago today. Our goal is to really work towards unity. And we're starting with economic unity in the Black Muslim community. So it's something I'm really excited about, something that I'm so glad. A Breckenridge said, how much are the coaching sessions? So I charge $350 an hour. If you pay for one session, you get two. So that'll be so $350 will get you two sessions. Okay. And we'll work through some of your issues, give you some tools and help you to unlock, see past some of your blind spots and unlock some of your stuck thinking. Okay. So we're participating this morning in the Black Muslim History Tour at Sajdah House. We ask that you continue to support. Go to sajdahhouse.com to get your commemorative Elijah coin. If you use the discount code Messiah, MESSIAH, you get 10% off. If you say, well, I can't really do a coin right now, you can always Cash App us some support. That may help, pay for security. It may help, get some new flowers. Any little bit helps. So $Mo today, that's MOETODAY. That's our Cash App. Let me know how you all are feeling about these shows, our programming. I asked you all to do little short video clip of testimony. If I've helped you and supported you in any way, I would appreciate that testimony. So I see, thank you, and I Cash App. Oh, praise be to Allah. Okay. If you want to book a session, go to the link in the bio on my Facebook or my Instagram. Both of them are Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. And if you go there, you can book a session and I will give you one for free. That's a really reasonable amount. I have people in my coaching circles. They went on my links and they said, what are you doing? We charging $1,500 a session. I said, I know a lot of our people haven't manifested to the point where they can get at $1,500 a session. So we're going to do it so that we offer and we can give back. And supporting, I know that Allah is with us, and I know that He's with me in my desire to give back and uplift His name. So thank you all in the chat. Let me just shout y'all out before we go. While y'all are Cash Apping $Mo today, or while you're ordering your coin, I'm going to do this little shout out. Let's go back here in the comments. Patty G said, love and finance. Love and finance is so important. Lamont said he's working on it. Brother Lamont, I don't know what you're working on. You mean your video? He said he's working on his video. Okay. Brother Lamont, you sent me a really beautiful message the other day. I think all you have to do is just read that message that you talked about when you were in the hospital and us praying for you. And we pray for everybody. I wish everybody here that's watching and listening more love, more goodness, more peace, more abundance for you than you've ever experienced or imagined. That's what I want to put out into the world. Why do I put that out into the world? Because that's what I want to come back to me. Love, support, abundance. And so we wrap our virtual arms around you. Thank you so much, A. Breckenridge. We already answered that question. Let's see. Yep. How people see and value. We addressed that comment. So we wrap our beautiful and loving and virtual arms around you if you're in this community, if you're watching, and whatever you're going through. I just pray that you understand that Allah is with you, that He is just working you and tweaking you and getting you ready for that next level. And it's just the labor process. Solomon the First said it's like committing suicide because you have to kill a part of yourself. Yeah, he's referring back to when we were talking about how the grafting process that has taken place since we've been here in America to graft our creativeness out of us, our connection to Allah out of us, means that you have to kill parts of yourself in order to survive. So thank you for that comment. Thank you for participating. I'm going to skip some of these. Shout out Ross Nora. Sandra D. Yes, ma'am. You are so right. Marvelous Marva. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you all who are here. I see you all. Brother Michael says, say that again. Brother Kevin gives a thumbs up. Solomon the First, we already shouted you out. Sister Alita, blessings. Wa alaikum salam. Brother Michael, Brother Carlos, Asada and Afeni. I like that. So thank you all. Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to, I don't know what we're doing next Thursday. Apologize for last Thursday. I just literally had to just take a mental health day and just kind of be to myself the whole day. So we also rescheduled our guest that was set for Thursday. I don't know when it is though, but it's coming soon. So anyway, support the program, support the house. Y'all remember freedom ain't free. And we always desire for people to come and do things for our community, to come and love on us and pray on us and bless us. But it takes support to do that financially. So, all right. Wishing you all more peace and blessings than you've ever experienced or imagined. Take a minute to tell someone today that you love them and that you appreciate them and that you support them. And buy black today. It's Juneteenth, y'all. Make sure if you go out to dinner that you go eat somewhere that's black owned. If you buy something today, make sure that you do it in the black community or from someone that's black. Be intentional about what you're doing. And greetings and shout out to Masjid Al Taqwa and the Black Muslim History Tour. We will see you all in a couple of hours. And I'm looking for y'all's testimonial videos. All right. Love you all. Peace and blessings. Shout out to the Black Muslim community.
You belong to yourself. You're an independent people, created from the nation of free people. Yes, sir. You don't need to go nowhere but to yourself. Yes, sir. There will be a great separation. Yes, sir. So I said, it is on now.
The college is meant to prepare you for your future. That the time dictates that if we don't do something for ourselves as a people, we will be destroyed. And the aim of the enemy right now is to take us out.
We have God with us. We have Him as our guide. Yes, sir. We don't have to stand around here and ask the question, what must be done? Yes, sir. Get up and let's go and do something. Yes, sir. We cannot sit down. We cannot lay down. Yes, sir. We must get up. Yes, sir. And go to work.
Do you know what real joy is in life? Visioning something and bringing it into reality. That's real joy. Do you know what the next step in joy is? Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity.
Tonight, you need to fasten your seatbelts. We're going to hear from some of the greatest minds in the world. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of trusting our future and the future of our children into the hands of those who don't love us. I believe we need to revitalize black leadership.